Hello and welcome to another episode of What the F. Well, it's been a couple of weeks since I've done one of these videos, and it's to those who watch them, apologies for the delay. It's a combination of two things really. Coming up with topics again, I always ask at the end of the video if you have an idea for me. Feel free to send it to me. Which again, I repeat, feel free if you want to. And it's that, and it's also I'm thinking at the moment of collaborating with a friend of mine. A friend of mine who actually took the photograph of me with the Superman cup in the opening credits. Carol Donovan is her name. We've been talking lately about collaborating on something because she does a blog called Musings with a Cup of Tea, and she's lately been talking about how about we do something together. I do the videos, she does the blog, so we've been talking about how we're going to fit that together. So we've been sharing topics and talking about what we could end up doing. So that's me, excuses out of the way. And one other thing you probably noticed if you're watching the video, you noticed the ridiculous mustache that I'm sporting. This is not a style choice. This is it's November, which means it's the month of Movember, where it's kind of a global thing. It's become a global thing where men grow and cultivate a moustache for the entire month of November in a bid to raise awareness of men's health issues like testicular cancer and mental health issues as well. And that's why I have this. It's taking part in it, so it's all for a good cause. So anyway, back to the subject. I'll actually be doing 2 videos this week, and this is sort of primarily to compensate for the fact that I haven't done a video in a while, but also because a recent announcement was made that I'm just super excited about, and I just want to give my opinion on it. So I'll do this video, and then there'll be another one during later on in the week. So I'm looking forward to that because it's going to be a brilliant topic. I'm looking forward to it. So the topic for this week's video is podcasts. Now, when I first bought an iPod, I just I downloaded iTunes as you do, and started loading the iPod with music, and then I heard about this thing, the podcast. So most people know what a podcast is, but I'll tell you what, it's essentially a free audio program in iTunes that you can subscribe to, and a lot of them, they have weekly episodes, and some of them they kind of take the form of like a radio show, but minus ad interruptions and music, and it's they're pretty good because again they're free. Free entertainment is always good, and some of the programs are just absolutely fantastic. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, but what I thought I'd do is highlight 6 of my top favorites and just tell you about those. Right, so the first one I'm going to talk about is one that actually was introduced to me by my brother, and it's called Hamish and Andy. And Hamish and Andy are 2 Australian DJs called Hamish Blake and Andy Lee. They're 2 DJs, comedians. They're fucking hysterical. I've mentioned their YouTube channel in a previous video before, but they do a daily radio show called Hamish and Andy's Happy Hour, where their goal in this essentially is to tackle, they say, every topic on earth. And they've already, and it's just absolutely hysterical because they posted on their website, this is this week's topic, tell us your story about it. And they've covered topics such as the Beatles, Superman, James Bond, into more weirder topics like tiny versions of things. And a most recent episode called Break and Enter, where they actually broke into a friend's house because they wanted to retrieve a signed Muhammad Ali poster that belonged to Andy Lee, and he was convinced this guy took it with him when he moved out. So they literally broke into the house. You listen to the audio program; it's called Break and Enter. You can hear them literally break in the window in the house, sneaking about looking for stuff. They didn't find it in the end, but it was just, most of the topics are absolutely hysterical because they're just funny guys. And it's definitely each episode is about 25 minutes, so it's not a huge program, but it's it's a good thing you can listen to during lunch break or whatever, or during work, depending on how busy things are. And it's just absolutely hysterical. Highly recommend that. And like, nice one to my brother for recommending it, because that's where I first heard about it. Right, so the next podcast I'm going to talk about is this one, and it's called The Paranormal Podcast. Now, the name says it all what it's about. It's hosted by an American guy called Jim Harold. And essentially, it's a weekly podcast. And what he does is he interviews figures and people from varying paranormal genres, from like ghosts. The topics he covers like would be ghosts, UFOs, psychics, life after death, telepathy, anything kind of considered would be paranormal. He interviews like researchers and experiencers from those varying topics, and it's an interesting one because again he makes it kind of clear in some of the episodes what his belief is, but he kind of holds that back because a lot of shows you see where the host, it's clearly obvious what their opinion is, whereas this guy Jim Harold, he just, he holds back and he interviews. He doesn't necessarily shove his opinion down throats. He's just like, right, I'm interviewing this guy, let him put his case across, and he has a neutral fucking he has a neutral stance on the topic that he's discussing that week, and each week different topic, and it's fascinating. Again, there's a lot of the paranormal that I pretty much don't believe in as an atheist. Like, most of it is silly. But it's fascinating. It really is. Even the ones that I would regard as ridiculous, like ghosts and stuff like that. I don't believe in such things, but the programs are fascinating when you hear about the experiences and the stories. And again, I believe in UFOs, so those ones are of particular interest to me because that's something I believe in. But it's a good show, and again, it's called Jim Harold Paranormal Podcast. So if you're ever in iTunes, give it a look. Right. So the next three are in a kind of similar vein because they're under the same kind of podcast network, and all three have the same host. There are like two people hosting each one, but all three have one host that is exactly the same, and that's the writer and director Kevin Smith. I mean, Kevin Smith. He made movies like Clerks, Chasing Amy, Dogma, the recent Red State. And he's most people know he does Q&As, like he travels and he does these questions and answer sessions, primarily in like colleges and universities and stuff. And he does them very well. He's a funny guy, and he's built this podcast network, and is basically called the Smodcast Podcast Network. And the first show on that network is one called Hollywood Babble-On. It's a show hosted by Kevin and a friend of his, a radio DJ called Ralph Garman, and it's hysterical. But the basic premise of the show is it's called Hollywood Babble-On. They talk about Hollywood and show business, and just generally make fun of it. They talk about it. They talk about what's in the news in regards to they read emails from people. They highlight dead celebrities, give them a bit of praise, and then they get into the show business section of things, is where the show really picks up, because it's just absolutely hysterical, their take on it. They talk about celebrities like fucking Kim Kardashian, because we can fucking call her a celebrity, Lindsay Lohan, and they just generally make fun of them, and it's just their take on it is hysterical. And Ralph, not only a DJ, but actually pretty good at impressions, because he does impersonations of the likes of Al Pacino, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sean Connery, and they're just hysterical the way he does them. He's very good at it, but he's just very funny. And then the whole show tends to end with a funny segment, and it's called How Big is Liam Neeson's Cock? Essentially, there's apparently this story out there that Liam Neeson has the biggest dick on the planet. Reportedly, he's well hung or something. I don't know what that's about. But it sort of started out as made up facts. Like, if you've ever heard of the Chuck Norris facts, they're made up facts, and it's just fucking sights and absolutely hysterical. So just they end the show at that, and it's a good one because it's just brilliant. And so again, show's called Hollywood Babble-On, so you should check that one out because it's, again, they're all hysterical. Most of the podcasts I'm listing here are just funny. So from one funny to another. The next one now will be more familiar to people who are a fan of Kevin Smith and his films. They know he has a kind of his hetero life mate, or Jay, and everyone knows from the movies like Dogma, Chasing Amy, and Mallrats, the characters of Jay and Silent Bob. Like, you know, you have Jason Mewes, who's Jay, and Silent Bob is Kevin Smith. Now they do a show together, and it's appropriate called Jay and Silent Bob Get Old. And it's essentially what it is those two on stage, comedies, much like Hollywood Babble-On, only it's more focused. Kevin Smith refers to it as an intervention podcast because, as most of us would know who will have heard of Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes, know Jason Mewes has struggled with addiction to drugs and alcohol over the years. It's clean now, but Kevin Smith refers to it as an intervention podcast because he uses it sort of like, you know, we'll keep Jason clean. He's answerable to all these people who listen to the podcast and who show up for the live show. And there's a segment in actually every episode where he asks Jason how long he's been clean and sober. And last check, he's been sober over 3 years now, which is good. And but it's the first 12 episodes were primarily about Jason's life and his struggles with the addiction. But mostly now it's pretty much just two guys on stage chatting about their lives, about experiences. Jay talks about the drug days and sex stories. They're just absolutely hysterical. Sometimes they like to involve the audience. There's a segment they do at the end of each episode where it's a game they call Let Us Fuck. And what it basically is Kevin Smith will come up with an imagined sexual position, not like missionary or doggy style, just an imaginary one, just out of his own head. And Jason Mewes will act out that sexual position with a member of the audience. They call it air sex because nothing fucking really happens on stage, but it's just hysterical. And it's a podcast worth checking out again. It's called Jay and Silent Bob Get Old. They do live shows as well. I saw them in Dublin there recently. They were just absolutely hysterical. So it's definitely one I recommend. It's definitely one you should check out. Right, the penultimate one is the last. It's the last in the podcast network of Kevin Smith. It's called Smodcast. Now this show he hosts with his longtime friend and collaborator Scott Mosier, and it was the first podcast Kevin Smith did. It started the podcast network that he would go on to build. And much like the other shows, the common element of the shows I've mentioned that involve Kevin Smith is two guys just talking with humorous results. They talk about funny things, stories from the old days, stories about the movies and all that. Just general chit-chat between two friends, and it's just hysterical. Now, that's not a live show. They do live shows the odd time here in Scott, but it's primarily, they record it, I think, at Kevin's house. And it's just, again, like the other previous two, just absolutely hysterical at times, because this is, again, Kevin Smith's a funny guy to begin with, but Scott Mosier, most people, because he was just producer of the movies. You know, nobody really knew about Scott Mosier all that much. But we do now, and through this podcast, which you should check out again, it's called Smodcast, just hysterical, because they just talk about anything. They don't go, right, we have a topic here, today we're going to talk about this. It's just more like I'm talking, now they be like, hey, what's up? And again, it tends to go off in weird fucking tangents, and it's just very funny stories. So definitely one worth checking out. Now the last podcast is a very kind of a good one for me, and I frankly was surprised that I was able to track it down at all. Now, through previous videos, and as you can tell by the hoodie here, big lover of Superman. And the history of Superman goes all the way back to the comics from the 30s, 40s. But there was also the first kind of iteration of Superman in terms of media, like radio and TV and media like that, was the radio. In the 40s and 50s, there was a radio program of Superman, and it went on from the 40s all through the 50s. Over like something like over 2,000 programs were made because they were on every day, and it's just it's a show. The show is called, the one I'm downloading is called the Old Time Radio Superman Show. It's hosted by a guy in America called Adam Graham. And basically he managed, I don't know how, but he managed to track down the entire library of Superman shows from the 40s and 50s. And he puts them out as a podcast for free, and they're fascinating because it's interesting to see the progression of Superman through these serials, because in the comic books originally there was no kryptonite. I mean, we all know that kryptonite is Superman's weakness. He goes near it, he loses his strength, it could kill him. And there's many versions of the kryptonite. But kryptonite was originally brought up in this radio program. It had never been in the comics up until that point. And the only reason they invented it, I only found this out recently, the guy who did the voice of Superman and Clark Kent in the radio program, this guy called Clayton Bud Collier. And the reason they brought up kryptonite as a plot device was because Clayton would occasionally want time off work, go on holiday or something, just have the day off to relax. So they brought in this thing of, oh, this weakens Superman, so he's out for the count, so that Clayton could have the day off. And again, that's historic, because again, it would go on into the comic books and into the films and the TV programs that kryptonite is the only substance in existence that can harm Superman. And it's just a fascinating piece of history, because you see how it progressed, because it started out in the comics, then there's this radio serial, and it's very kind of, again, 40s 50s oriented, you know, the old style radio voice, and it's just some of the plots in some of the programs are a bit kind of far-fetched, but as the show progressed, it just got more and more fucking I don't know if I'd say extreme. Like, there was a recent I think it was a 15, 16 part serial called The Atom Man, where Superman essentially came up against a guy who was imbued with power kind of like him. He'd taken like some atomic material and was able to incorporate it in his body, and he was the Atom Man. And it nearly killed Superman. Like, there's in the last episode of that serial, there's this again, it's audio. Your mind has to fill in the fucking pictures. You don't know visually what it's going to look like, so you have to imagine it. And it's just like Superman and Atom Man flying through the sky, kind of vaguely mimicking the fight scene in the recent Man of Steel between Superman and General Zod. They're just flying through the air, knocking the crap out of each other, with eventually Superman emerging victorious. And it's just, it's a fascinating piece. I mean, I love it. It's a great program. And it's just, again, I'm only up to episode 500, and there's a fucking lot. But it's taken me ages to catch up to this, but it's a great program for any lover of Superman, and any lover of the radio serials of those era, because again, there was all sorts of radio serials. I think there was a Batman one, there was Dragnet, all these radio programs. Anyone who loves those audio programs from the radio would kind of like this one. Even if you're not a big Superman fan, you could like this if you're into those audio programs. So it's again, it's called the Old Time Radio Superman Show. I'm biased, I love it because again, I love Superman. So, but check it out. It is seriously good. Right. Well, this is actually the shortest video I think I've done in a while. I'm surprised. But this that's the end of this episode. Again, apologies to those who watch. Apologies for the delay. Again, I've been coming up with new ideas, and hopefully watch this space for the collaboration with my friend Carol in the future. And again, I'll post this video, and then later on in the week I'll do another, because again, I'm just brimming with excitement with a recent announcement. I won't say what it is, but those who know me probably know what it is. But I'm just so excited about the news I've heard recently. And I'll make the video later, because there's going to be another announcement about the great news soon. So I'm going to kind of update it. You know, I want to have all the information. I don't want to do a two-parter. But no. So I'll watch this space for the collaboration with my friend. and also for second video, which will be out this week. I'll probably try and post it Saturday. So thanks anyway for watching. Again, if you have any comments, if you like me listen to a lot of podcasts, do you have any recommendations? Let me know. My Twitter, Facebook, email is all at the end credits of the show. And you could leave a comment with this video if you like. Let me know what you think. Let me know your opinions on the podcast, whether you've subscribed to them, what you think of them, or again, as I said, if you have recommendations. But either way, yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.